Welcome to the Through the Lens of Learning podcast. If we haven't met, hello, I'm your host, Dr. Tracy Shroyer. I'll give you 2 words that summarize me to a T: lifelong learner. Join me as I share a bit about my own journey of curiosity, learning, and wonder. You'll also get to hear from some phenomenal individuals on what they're curious about learning and what they have to share too. Are you itching with excitement yet? I am, so let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Through the Lens of Learning podcast. And today I have guest with me, Jeannine Thompson. So welcome, Jeannine.
Thank you.
And so Jeannine, just to kick everything off, what I ask all of my guests is, how do you define learning?
I define learning as anything that makes me grow, expand, push past my comfort zone, learn new skills. Anything that puts me on a growth journey, really.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you are going to share some more just about your learning journey. So I will give you the floor wherever you want to start in that journey. Feel free.
Okay. I think lifelong learning has always been a huge part of my life. Even, from a very young age, I was very rewarded as a young child for, for getting good grades, for being smart, and that never changed. And so I learned that this is how I get love. And then it became something later that I enjoyed myself. It wasn't for the reward. And I'm really glad that started out that way for me, because it's been a huge part of my life, lifelong learning. So I also learned from my mom. My mom was uneducated when I was growing up, and I watched her struggle with, lack of opportunity. And it made an impression on me as a very young person. Like, this is what I need to do. I need to get educated. I need to, in order to open up doors for myself and have the opportunities that I want, I need education and I need to learn. And so that started me on the path. And I got my bachelor's degree. That was my first degree. I got that in molecular biology. I was very pushing myself at that time to go as rigorous and as hard as possible. For some reason, I felt like that would, I don't know, that was the pinnacle of learning, was to go really rigorous. And I wanted to be a scientist and, save the world and all that kind of stuff. And so that was my first degree, but I was kind of addicted to it. I always knew I was going to keep going. And then I moved on. I went on to learning other areas of biology and studying that. Then I found that a little bit tedious. And so I was like, okay, what else can I do but using this knowledge that I already have? And I got into teaching. I got into wildlife biology. I was kind of a dabbler. I was just like, I wanted to learn all the things and really find what really stuck with me. And I eventually became a nurse, which I am now. And I kind of I'm happy as long as I'm still growing and learning. But once I feel like I've hit a plateau, then I'm like, okay, what else can I do? And so a few years back, or probably in 2017, I decided I was going to become a health coach using my knowledge base and experience as a nurse. And so, but I had zero experience with business, zero experience with technology that I would need to build it. But I knew that I could learn anything. That was one of my central beliefs in myself, is that I already had this background in being able to learn, be enjoying learning. So even if something got hard, that I was going to enjoy the process and I could overcome anything. And it was hard. I mean, I have to tell you that learning how to do this and the technology that was involved was much harder than getting my molecular biology degree. And I really wasn't anticipating that. I'm not a tech native. In my work was always very hands-on. I wasn't a computer person. And so learning all this was extraordinarily hard. And there was many times I wanted to give up, but that central belief in myself that I could learn anything, and that learning was the gateway to opportunity just kept me going. And so, I built 2 businesses. and it was a very, very steep learning curve, as I've indicated. But once I got it, I felt very, proud of myself, because again, I had expanded, I had grown, and that's a huge part of my identity. So yeah, now I have a third business that I built, because once I started to kind of get the hang of it, I was like, I'm liking this. I really like it. Yeah, I like the creative process of it. Um, and I can't say that now I'm done learning. I'm continuously always going to be looking for that new thing. I'm actually going to go on a safari and wildlife filmmaking workshop. I'm going to learn how to do wildlife filmmaking in October. So yeah, I'm always looking for that
Amazing.
thing to learn.
Okay, so I'm thinking of a lot of questions that I have for you
I know
just
it's a
based on
little
what you shared.
long-winded. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Um, so your molecular biology, become health coach, and all these other business aspects. Um, how did you identify when, or maybe what were the feelings when things started to feel stagnant and that you knew you needed to change, like you knew you needed to go a
Mm-hmm.
different direction? Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's a very familiar feeling for me. Like, I'll as soon as I'm no longer stimulated and feeling like I'm growing, I get restless. I get bored. I get like I need to be doing something new. I need to be, expanding. I don't know. It's just a restless feeling that I get, that I know it's time to move forward again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when like you talk about getting into starting your own business and not being the
Mhm.
tech native and getting into all that, I know one of the things that I can say is getting into entrepreneurship and starting a business is you see all the good things and all the happy positive things like on social media, on websites, and you don't
Right.
understand all the hard work that goes
Right.
into the background. One of the things that I know as an entrepreneur is you can either figure it out and learn it yourself, or you can pay money and have somebody do it.
Hmm.
So, in thinking about those two paths, how did you determine as you were going along and building your businesses, like what am I going to tackle and what do I think that I can accomplish and learn versus
Yeah.
should I just pay somebody for that?
Well, in the beginning, I had so much faith in my ability, and wasn't even thinking about hiring other people. I didn't even know that what help was out there, honestly.
Mm,
I didn't even know. And so I just tried. It was dumb, but I tried to power through and do it all on my own. And man, I hit a wall. I definitely hit a wall. And it wasn't until I started discovering how easy it was to find help, and they were better at it than me. The end product looked better, so why was I, spending my nights and weekends like struggling to build, some piece of technology or learn it and become good at it enough to make the end product look good?
mm.
Why was I doing that when I could just pay this guy? Like,
Because
it
we're
wasn't even.
stubborn.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
and I didn't even know what options there were really in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. And of course, later on, when I discovered it, I was like, I started doing that more and more. I'm like, this is the way to go, because it
Mm-hmm.
looks better. They've been doing it a lot longer. But when I was building that first business and I was really struggling with it, kind of down the line, I was at this point of like, I'm giving up. Like, I can't do this. I really need somebody to do this for me. I wish I had this friend who was like really high tech, who could be like, oh, let me just do that. This is all you do. And I didn't have that friend. And I started searching the internet for it, for the kind of help that I wanted. I wanted somebody to just take all what I've done so far, take my ideas, package it up, and do it for me and give me back the finished product.
Right.
And like, where is this person? And they didn't exist. And that's when I decided to create FireLaunch, which is my current business. So I determined that once I got it all figured out, I was going to do that for other people. So
Oh, I love that.
yeah, so now I do offer those one and done, done for you packages.
Very cool.
So all the years that I spent struggling, giving up my nights and weekends,
Saving
other
people
people can
time
benefit from that.
and energy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, in addition to technology, what would you say are some of the other things that you learned along the way of building your business or building your businesses?
Well, people aren't going to understand. The people in your life aren't going to understand where you're at. You used to spend time with them. Now you don't have time. Because, especially if you're working full time, I'm not working full time anymore, but at the time I was, all my nights and weekends were taken up by that. I gave up vacations. Were taken up by working on my business. And, people started, at first they were supportive, and then they kind of were like, yeah, your business, kind of, they weren't, they thought it was just kind of silly. They didn't understand. They missed, being with me. I got some pushback. I did lose some friends, honestly, because I wasn't present enough for them. That was really hard. Yeah, just the time commitment. The people in your inner circle who weren't necessarily supportive. And I had one person, which is my partner, Steve, who believed in me completely. And no matter what, was like, yeah, you got this, let's do this. He was always my cheerleader, and he was what I needed. And I think everybody really needs at least one person. But I started to build that community virtually of other entrepreneurs, because I really needed that. So I think, yeah, just needing that support, the time commitment, the energy, and just the long-term endurance to keep going. So at first you're really enthusiastic, you're going to do it. And then that starts to that starts to fade, and you got to have that endurance to keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just overwhelmed by thinking about your background and all the things that you have done and where you are.
I know people always joke that I've lived a bunch of lives.
So you had mentioned about one of your businesses. Can you share what the other two businesses you have?
Yeah. So the first one was my health coaching business, and I started doing that, and I felt like it was a bit too much like patient care. And I had been wanting to get away from that. I wanted to help people in a better way than I thought Western or conventional medicine could help, but I still felt in the healthcare world, and I kind of had wanted to feel a little bit out of that. So I wanted to kind of go to the deeper roots of people's issues, because as I was health coaching, I realized that people aren't going to make these positive changes if they're still stuck in bad. They don't have a good mindset. They don't have a healthy mental, state. So I wanted to build a mindset coaching business, which I did. And then that was when I started really kind of getting the groove of building things and enjoying that creative process. And then I kind of found that I liked the building better than the actual coaching. So when I was coaching, I was getting a little bit like, I kind of missed the creative side of the building much better. And so then I started FireLaunch, which is the done for you service that I do now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so with FireLaunch, will you share a little bit more about what are some of the done for you services that you do there?
Yeah. So anything that you're going to need to have an online business, and in particular, I like to help health coaches just because I've done it. I know how to speak that language. I know what you're going to need. And I know the challenges. I know many nurses, especially who start health coaching businesses, they're analytical people. They're and they haven't been on the computer as much. And so they get out of health coaching school and they're like, okay, now what do I do? How do I build this business? They've learned about coaching people, but not any kind of business. They didn't learn anything about how to build a business in their programs. It was very heavily like patient centered. And so anything that they're going to need, which is email marketing, setup and templates, social media, the content and the automation for 3 months in the beginning, just get that loaded up for launches and for promos, blog posts, website design and development, logos. God, what am I forgetting? There's also some like one-on-one coaching to make sure they're doing the things that they need on their end. They're not just becoming complacent and saying she's doing it all, because there's still things that they're going to be needing to do to get ready. So everything that they're going to need to get their business up and running. And it's what's good is it's all being done in one spot. And I don't do everything individually. I have team members, but they don't have to look for, individual freelancers and hope they're good and hope they all come together, because they're not communicating. So what's good is there's just this one central person who's kind of managing that all. So we know that it's all going to integrate. We know that it's all going to be cohesive. Yeah,
It sounds like you really created what you couldn't find. You were looking for that
exactly. That's
one.
exactly what I did.
Yes, I love
Because I
that.
figured if I was looking for it, other people were looking for it too.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, what would you say? Like, are there any tips or best practices you would give to somebody who is starting out their business and they're trying to learn the ropes and what to do, where to go, based on your experiences?
I would say it sounds like you did it too. Like, not to think that you can do it all on your own. It's huge. It's a huge undertaking, and it kind of saps the joy out of your life if you don't allow for any free time,
Right.
which I did. Yeah. I would say from the very beginning, just find somebody that you can trust and ask for help. And, it's great to learn all the things, but you're not going to get to that point of being proficient. If your goal is to get this business going as soon as you can and quit that awful job that you're trying to get out of, you know, just ask for help right away. I think that's the biggest one. I don't think you have to do it all on your own. It's just kind of, it won't work. It
Right,
won't work, first of all, but you'll burn yourself out. You might even like say, you know what, this isn't for me. I guess I'm not good at this. So I think it's good right away to get help.
right.
Yeah.
So, did you ever imagine you would be here from the days of starting in biology,
No,
working on websites and all
no.
this technical stuff and
No,
stuff?
I figured I was going to be like, the Surgeon General, or like I had big goals always, but it usually had to do with, or curing cancer. Like that's just kind of how I was. Or then later on, I wanted to be, wildlife biologist. And so, no, I was always a scientist from a very young age. So no, I didn't ever picture this at all. I always said, I don't have any business sense. And it's just another thing I needed to learn. So no, but I'm stoked I'm here.
Yeah. And I think you said earlier you mentioned being a dabbler and dabbling in different things. And it sounds like even from your safari that you're going on later in the year, that you're continuing to do that. It's not just staying in one lane, it's
No,
being
I get
curious and
bored.
passionate.
I get
Yeah.
bored. I need new challenges, and I find so many things exciting and interesting that if I don't at least kind of explore them a little bit,
Hmm.
I'm always like, but what about that? Yeah.
So, a question for you on that. How do you prevent yourself from, like, you might find something interesting and go down that path? How do you, like, there's a lot of things that are so
I
interesting and like these
know.
shiny objects. How do you pull
Yeah.
yourself back? Like, how do you, I know one of the things that you said is like when you're not feeling as passionate, when you're not feeling, like you're feeling stagnant, but sometimes you don't start to feel that until you're farther down the road. How do you make sure you're not getting involved, I guess, in too much?
Yeah, and that was something that I definitely struggled with in the beginning, because I didn't really know what the final iteration was going to be or what I wanted it to be. So I was kind of like, oh, well, what about that idea? Because you see it all over, social media, and
Right.
once you start getting into this world, you get bombarded with the ads for, oh, what about drop shipping? What about all this? And I'm like, oh, so it was very
Right.
definitely hard in the beginning, but I have learned to rein that in, and because I figured out what I really want to do, and that's helping people create their businesses. But the other thing, like the wildlife thing, those are just personal. That's just for my
Okay.
own personal fulfillment.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have to keep that personal fulfillment stuff going, all those interests there. But
That's
with the
good that you
business
have
stuff,
that distinction too. That this
yes,
is, that personal fulfillment, that fun, like hobby wise
yeah.
versus this is what I need, to do work wise. And
Yeah, because I had wanted to, like I said before, I had wanted to be a wildlife biologist too, and that dream didn't happen. And so I found that this is kind of a way that I can be involved in some of the things that I had really wanted to do when I was younger,
mm-hmm.
without, going back to school or focusing
Yep.
on that as a career. It's just like, well, I can do some of the things that I found really fascinating about about wildlife biology, and just kind of keep that in my personal life and get that kind of that fix that way.
Yeah, I like that. I had asked somebody before that really likes to cook. I'm like, well, why don't you go to culinary school? And they're like, well, it's more of a hobby. I don't want it to be my job because it won't be fun. It won't be a hobby.
Right.
So it's like trying to figure
Yeah.
out what falls under that versus, what falls under the work kind of
Yeah.
professional life for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Jeannine. So did we cover, or is there anything that maybe we didn't cover related to your learning journey that you wanted to share?
No, I think I was long-winded enough. I think I told my whole story.
Perfect. All right. So Jeannine, if people want to connect with you, and of course I know there's going to be entrepreneurs, small business owners listening that would be like, where do I get your services for FireLaunch? Where can they follow you and connect with you? What are the best places?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I have a Facebook page. So www.firelaunchbusiness.com is my website. And my Facebook is also FireLaunch Business, and as is my Instagram. Can't remember exactly what my LinkedIn handle is, but that's under Jeannine Thompson.
Okay.
So there's two Jeannine Thompsons in there. There's Jeannine Thompson with some numbers after it. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
That was not coming to mind.
And I'll include those I have from what you submitted with
Perfect.
So I'll include those in the description when this goes out.
Thank you.
So if anybody's listening isn't interested in connecting or following Jeannine, you have such an interesting background, and I love what you're doing now to help entrepreneurs and business owners. That's fantastic.
Thank
you. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by Upskill University. You can find more information about how to become part of the Upskill community for free, this and other episodes of the Through the Lens of Learning podcast, and more on the website at www.upskilluniversity.com. Thanks again for listening, and have an awesome day.